Basically, this whole argument, in essence, women want equal rights without equal responsibilities, is a stealth Nazi argument. It is. It's like what Pauline and them will go to is basically, their rights should be stricken from them because they don't have equal responsibilities that we have in our society. And then Paulie Lamb can go to, well, not all men are with us or agree with us, and those guys don't serve in the military. The military is more with us, so let's basically strike the guys that aren't part of the military from the voter rolls too. And it's just a convenient tool that these assholes use all over the place. And my my grand point is that it's a dangerous game to basically be playing, because the moment you start going to take one group of people's rights away, it's not very long before you're taking away more rights and more rights and more rights. It's a slippery slope. I always used to call out the slippery slope arguments, but note what happened here. In this case, it started with women don't deserve equal rights. They don't have equal responsibilities. And, in the case of women like Pearly Things and the women that are willing to fuck around and play along with agreeing with this ideology, they're basically going to basically say, oh, well, some men aren't military people. Why should they vote? They don't contribute to the nation in the way that I want them to contribute. I mean, I'm a guy, and this is why I wasn't, particularly enthused to join the men's rights movement that was happening because I saw what was happening. It was a Nazi ideology that was just dressed up, in a way that was supposed to appeal to us, but it was just, right wing Nazism all over again. It really was. I mean, maybe these people haven't put people in death camps, but that's just like kind of a matter of time, basically. How long before we're there with all of this and this kind of behavior? It's a stealth Nazi argument. It's like these Nazis changed, but they never really went away. They started just trying to find a way to make their case more convincingly to people. So it became the argument that the neo Nazis started using was, women don't have equal responsibilities to men, but they have equal rights, and that's not fair. To better articulate this in a way that you can understand. But then, in that conversation that happens, it's not hard for somebody to come in. Well, there are plenty of men out there that don't have equal responsibilities to other men out there. Some men aren't doing what the work of other men. Some men are not part of the military. Why should we not tie the right to vote to military service? And me here, I'm just, in even stating all this stuff out loud and stating these arguments, I want to vomit in my mouth a little because I don't agree with any of them. I don't agree with this point of view at all. Like, I'm disgusted that we have citizens that are basically at this point discussing taking away the rights of other citizens, except for the fact that, now I basically want to take away the right to exist from the people having these discussions and making these arguments in the first place. Because, these people are inherently a threat. And honestly, dialoguing with them clearly is a fucking fool's errand. The only conversation that's worth having with these people is a curb stomp. I mean, it's true. Unfortunately, they won't be reasoned with. So let the boots do the talking. I don't know what else to say in this particular thread and to say about all this, but this is exactly what I was concerned about. It was so easy to get to this point in what people were going to think and what people were going to say, and so now I'm just like, the only way to deal with this is with a kill switch. It's come here. It's time to pull the nuclear option of annihilation. Since it's gotten to this point, we should send the meteor, and you know, I mean, I don't know what else to say because it got to that point, and it's like, if I've come to realize that men who weren't part of the landed gentry, they got their right to vote via violence. Rivers of blood, had to be paved. The streets had to be paved with rivers of blood to get us the right to vote in the first place, even though we didn't own land. And if it has to come to that all over again, so be it. I'm done. I'm fucking done with you people. If terrorism is the only way to ensure that my rights are free and that you people back the fuck off on these, well, he doesn't have equal responsibility shit, then I guess I will fucking terrorize my society into submission. Because your kind is a fucking plague. You're just an infection on existence, a blight that frankly is an embarrassment to the rest of your species. I don't know I don't know what else to tell you, because I mean I saw all this coming. It was like, well, obviously there are plenty of men that don't have equal responsibilities to military brats, but you know I don't want to bring that point up because that just makes it seem like they've got a valid point of view. They're the ones that want to start axing, vote, taking away from these people because they think that America is filled with a bunch of bad apples and everything, and that the only way to fucking fix the system is to fucking prevent these people from actually having, control of the wheels themselves. And so it's like people like me who don't vote the way these assholes want them to, or are basically slated to basically have our rights taken away because we don't obey the Republican Party and swear allegiance to the crap ideologies of the Libertarian Party that they want us to belong to and everything else. And, I remember Wooly Bumblebee, pointed out the fact that, A Voice for Men had become a libertarian, worshiping cesspool, and if you weren't a member of the Libertarian Party, you would not be basically very welcome among them. And then I came around to realizing a lot of this stuff. I realized that there had been Republican politicians who had been arguing for quite a while that the right to vote should be tied to military service in this country, and I was like, I couldn't disagree more. You know, Besides which, why should we like why why do men have to sign up to have our lives put in harm's way and risk mortal death for a government that just wants to behave as world police, that wants to bully the rest of the world into submission, and wars that we're conscientious objectors to? I was not a big fan of the Iraq War. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought, it was a bit of a distraction that he was going in there. Now I'm not arguing that Saddam Hussein was not a bad man. He was, but is it our responsibility ultimately to dislodge this man? Is it worth putting our troops in harm's way to do it in the first place? And I'm like, you know what? No, it wasn't. And it went very badly. And the people who were managing it did a terrible job of doing it. There's no question. It's just that, like, nobody here or anywhere else is questioning whether Saddam Hussein was a bad person. Of course he was. But does that make it our responsibility to basically enforce our morals on that country in particular? Is it really ultimately our responsibility? Do you really think that we're going to be like able to be greeted as liberators and then stay in their territory as an insurgency breaks out and remain there and remain there and remain there and remain there and still be seen as liberators? They're going to eventually want us to get out. They're not going to want to be occupied territory forever and everything. I mean, initially, first, there may be a wave of jubilation, but it's going to fade and give way. you know Eventually you're going to be seen an occupier that's just as bad, if not worse, than the fucking dictators that you managed to topple for these people. It's like they were expecting you to get in, do it, get a job, and get out. And what happened in Iraq is that all of our enemies around the world saw it as an opportunity to fight American troops on soil that they were more familiar with and on their home turf. And they came in, crossed the border into this country, and you ended up with Al Qaeda in Iraq, who was, everybody else was looking at it. They were seeing the sectarian bloodshed, the chaos that was breaking out, and they were thinking, God, this is pure evil. What's happening in this place? But that's exactly what Al Qaeda basically intended in Iraq had basically intended. They wanted it to turn into a chaotic situation that would be very unstable, so that the peacekeepers would have to try desperately to keep the peace in the situation, and it would crumble on our American troops. And I mean, everything kind of just went to hell, and then the mission creeped beyond just kicking of Saddam Hussein out and installing, trying and convicting him and installing a more democratic government, and then getting out. Nah, it kept creeping to contain the insurgency that just kept expanding and expanding and expanding, and it's just like you know if there's one thing I've learned about war at this point, it's that anybody who thinks that they're just going to go in, even if they have the most powerful army in the world and take over in a matter of days, is sorely mistaken. I mean, yeah, we did manage to defeat the one enemy that we were aware of very quickly. We just didn't anticipate that. There were a bunch of more that were going to see it as an opportunity and pour in and pour on top of us. Then, I mean, W didn't predict it. I think it was kind of actually rather, in retrospect, it does kind of seem a little bit more predictable than it actually, you know, it seems like we kind of should have known that this would have happened, but didn't. You know what I mean? It feels kind of embarrassing that nobody seems to have basically seen it coming because in retrospect, we really should have been able to. It's a shame, that we didn't. It's such a shame that and it became very clear that Bremer later on had made all kinds of mistakes. You end up realizing that he had, well, we dislodged the Ba'athist over there. We did all that crap to them. We dislodged those group of people that were the security state for him, and then we didn't give them any jobs or anything else to do. So you have all these people just sitting around loitering, and the devil's hand make playthings, and so you ended up with ISIS and everything. I mean, well, idle hands don't make it. The devil aren't the devil's plaything in every case, but they certainly were. For those people, especially because they needed income somehow. They did. They very much so did. And there's you know what I would call a saying like that. I would call it a truism, in that it's like trends towards truth isn't always true. You know, and that's what I think of as that term. I think of it as a truism. That's an idea that, for me, I would define as something that trends towards truth, but isn't always true. So yes, the idle hands make the devil's playthings trends towards truth. It's not universally true. There have to be exceptions, but you know we know that that's how it tends to go. And we saw this reality manifest in Iraq. We saw the way that these people were so unoccupied, so bored and hungry, and without much to do, that they end up becoming members of ISIS. And it's like, oh god damn it, why did Bremer not predict this? Pretty epic mistake in retrospect. And it really was one that proactive thinkers would have been able to anticipate it. I mean, you've got this huge body of people, 1,000 plus of them, that we've just taken out of power. We haven't killed them off. They're the former security state. They need a job, though. So what do? They pick up their guns and try to erase the border between Syria and Iraq, and I mean, just chaos that ISIS had been the cause over there, and all that crap. And I mean, there are people that are like, oh god, that particular thing shows we never should have left the fucking region, and blah 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 blah. And people like me just, I turned against it. I was against it almost from the very beginning, because it was like, what is where, the the towers got hit. Somebody flew planes. Like, where what did Saddam Hussein have to do with what happened in those towers? I mean, I'm not seeing the connection here. I'm not really sure where you're getting off, trying to say this. I know there are a lot of people who believe it, but why? Like, they've taken this on faith. They haven't really thought it through, you know. And then it's like there were the yellow cake lies that basically Colin Powell was willing to push through. the United Nations, and then, he destroyed his credibility when it turned out to be bullshit. Joe Wilson publishes an article in the New York Times basically condemning this narrative by pointing out that the yellow cake shit was a lie and that when he went in, he didn't find anything. And then, of course, you see Cheney so pissed off about having the Bush narrative threatened or challenged by this that he decides to leak to Robert Novak that God, that Valerie Plame, Joe Wilson's wife, was basically a CIA member, and the president starts to look very vindictive, revengeful, revenge seeking, and all of this stuff, and alarm bells start coming off in your head because it's like, this is scary that we have a president that seems to have a revenge list and seems to do things like out spies because they happen to be, the wife of somebody that went to the New York Times to testify that the Bush administration's narrative isn't exactly accurate, and all this shit was going down. And it was like, almost from the very beginning, I ended up being a bit of a skeptic of this goddamn war. I know that our troops seem to have believed that they were fighting for our freedom and everything, but I don't want to insult the troops, but I really just don't think that's what was going on and why we were there. I think, that the troops were there because, George Bush wanted them there, and also because Halliburton, the oil contracts that were potentially on the line for, getting some of that, taking that oil. I don't think that was the only reason, but I think it was a big chunk of it. I think it's complicated and everything, but I really don't think Saddam Hussein was a threat to our freedom here in the United States. I mean, you all saw it. Where were the fucking WMDs? And George W. Bush insensitively joked about the whole thing. He basically cracked jokes about it, but they never actually showed up. They never found any. So it means that the whole, weapons of mass destruction are the reason we need to go in here. Well, there never were any weapons of mass destruction. Now were there? There were never any of that crap. It was like, God, this guy should be marched out of the White House in handcuffs. Jesus Christ. So I lived through all that, and it isn't just that. I was like a Cindy Sheehan protester. I was with her on all of that when that went down, and so it's like, you want to tie military service to the right to vote? Jesus Christ. Our government has not exactly made a responsible use of the troops that it has around the world in any sense. It has sent our troops into harm's way to take out a very bad man, truthfully, but was it our responsibility to die for our country? Just, was our troops' responsibility to die for our countries because there's a bad man on the other side of the world that was never really a threat to us here at home? And this is what you want to do. You basically want to say if they don't serve in the military, they don't have the right to vote. Color me disappointed. I wanted to believe that the people that occupied this nation were better than this, to think this, and to think that they should be allowed to basically take away the right to vote from a whole bunch of other people in this country. I'm disgusted by it. I'm disgusted to see this kind of Nazi shit, basically repeating itself. There are going to be people, there are going to be Jewish organizations that are going to say, well, how dare you compare your oppression to ours and everything else? We were killed in these camps. No end of reprisals of saying it, but all I can tell you is that you're the ones that have been educating us about the fucking Holocaust. You're telling us what happened over there. They split society apart. They divided people up until everybody was fighting everybody. And we've been pushed into this gender war of the sexes that I have been trying in every way to refuse to be basically part of. I never wanted this competitive shit dividing the two of us. I wanted us to be closer and everything as groups of people, and I've always been pretty consistent about saying that I think that the 19th Amendment was not a mistake. I think I do ultimately support a woman's right to vote, and I'm really rather disturbed to live in the presence of so many others who seem to think that it would be so fucking great to just take away wholesale groups of people because it's really easy, and convenient. And once you get to the point of taking people's rights away, to start taking away their property, and then you start taking their persons and pushing them into ghettos and prisons and everything else, and then why not start the annihilation? I mean, we've gone pretty far down this chain of destruction when it comes to casual drug users. Now it's what, feminist turn in this whole thing, and then it's going to be ours. Any person that wasn't part of the landed gentry as a man. And Bucko, if you happen to be a guy, you should know something if you're listening to this, since my audience is mostly men. If you are not a homeowner, when America was founded, you would not have the right to vote. Did you know that? Because the stipulations originally were that only people that owned property or land, no, not property, but land, were able to vote. So if your home is filled with shit that belongs to you, but it's not your home, guess what, Bucko? You didn't have the right to vote. You know how we got ours? Bombs, guns, grenades, violence. Our rights to vote were won on a mountain and river of blood before. And now we've got a whole new group of people that want to basically say, we want to take it away from you because you are not a member of the military. You have not put in your 2 years of military service that we want to make mandatory for you. You've got to die for the government, or at least risk it, or die, serving us and achieving objectives for us, or die trying. And, you've got this whole group of people, and guess what? Just Pearly Things is another fucking one of them, mentored by scumbags like Paul Elam, and the ongoing debate that has existed here on YouTube since almost the genesis of all of it, where it was always, women want equal rights, but they don't really have equal responsibilities. And I called it back then. I basically predicted the very obvious linear progression of this slippery slope that has basically now been experienced, and we're now seeing it, where it morphed from one argument. Women, all you have to do is say, take just to morph logic. So basically, think about variables. Take the word women want equal response. Take the whole phrase. Women want equal responsibilities, but they don't. Women want equal rights, but they don't want equal responsibilities. Take the word women out, replace it with an X that can vary, add some in front of it, and then say some men want equal rights, but they don't have equal responsibilities to other men like our military people. And then you can start taking more and more rights away. And it's like when you go down that rabbit hole, when you've done it, when you've already taken one group of people's rights away, it's so easy, isn't it, to start moving into taking away a whole nother group of people. And it doesn't matter that you're their fellow white male. None of it seems to matter at all. They want to, it's funny how convenient it is for them. They could take and take and take and take. And when is it going to stop with these people? When will it ever really reach the bottom of this? We want to snatch away these people's rights. And so I can't help but come on here and condemn it in the most strong language possible. I think that this whole I don't think women should have the right to vote statements and saying that kind of shit. I think that way of thinking should be morally mandated out of existence, really. If you think that way, I think we should be pushing towards basically your elimination from the gene pool. And I'm not sorry to say it. I'm done. I'm so done with it, because it's like I was right. I saw all of this coming. It was so predictable. It feels great to be a fucking Cassandra, doesn't it? Nobody believed me, but guess what? That's exactly what Pearly thinks. She thinks some guys aren't military brats, so they shouldn't be able to vote. I think these people should go fuck themselves, as a great big collective of them. put the gun in your mouth and fire it, kill yourself, you're dead weight.